Senator, this is an act to amend the criminal procedure law in relation to the use of video monitoring equipment to conduct arraignments, video arraignments for in-custody defendants.
Motion to report. Senator Squadron.
Thank you very much. And this is a bill we've discussed in the past, so I point both to a floor debate last year and also an extensive committee debate. There are significant concerns raised, not just by myself, but by other members, about access to counsel in this sort of arraignment, and the free and unmediated and interaction with counsel for arraignments. It's completely unclear in this bill how that would be protected or assured, and that's an enormous issue. Secondly, obviously, arraignments do require some amount of judgment on the part of the judge, and want to be very careful about anything that might be prejudicial. We understand the issue here. There's probably a system, by the way. The fact of the video relationship, the arraignment, is not the issue. The issue is creating that video without lots of protections for access to counsel and clear instructions to the judge about how to understand that video. If, for example, it's from a correctional institution. And so this bill lacks both of those protections and therefore can't move forward, which is not to say that the money savings of video arraignments couldn't conceivably be created, just not this way. So it's a no. Right to counsel, very important.
Thank you, Senator Squadron. Motion is report 3083 by Senator Young, no. Senator Kruger, and Senator Squadron in the negative. Bills reported. 3104 by Senator Ritchie.
Senator, this is an act to amend the criminal procedure law in relation to peace officers.
Senator Squadron.
Without rec, and again, I would point out, even in ones where the argument is compelling, for the purpose of this committee, I really want to send that message, let's do it all at once. So without rec, even on this bill.
Senator Squadron, Senator Kruger without recommendation. The bill's reported. 3200. I'm sorry. Senator Kruger decided to be a no. I think you always decided to be a no.
Years ago.
Again, it's the same issue, the same questions that I really wish you would look at beyond the city of New York, because again, these are circumstances that arise that your people in your city are protected. But people outside the city of New York, without that great police force that the city has to make do with other types of arrangements, and that's why these measures have come before us. I've lost track. We just finished 3104 by Senator Ritchie with Senator Squadron without rec and Senator Kruger in opposition. The bill's passed. 3200 by Senator Abella.
Senator, this is an act to amend the penal law in relation to vandalism of vehicles owned by law enforcement personnel.
Motion to report. Negative votes. Bills reported. 3212A by Senator Young.
Senator, this is an act to amend the penal law in relation to establishing the offenses of promoting and possessing sexual materials against children.
Motion to report. Negative votes. Bills reported. By Senator Golden, 3281.
Senator, this is an act to amend the penal law in relation to resisting arrest of a police officer or peace officer.
Senator Squadron.
Thank you. So this is another creation of felons bill. We've discussed this one before, but I want to be clear, there are laws on the books for resisting arrest. There are certainly laws on the books for, if you're resisting arrest or anything else, acts like assaulting a police officer and other things that are absolutely appropriately and importantly felonies. But simply a resisting arrest on its own, just to give you a sense, in 2014 in New York City, suspects were charged with resisting arrest in more than 7,000 arrests. Over a 10-year period, if that happens twice, you now have a felony, without any other felony action there. I would also point out that in some instances, the resisting arrest charge is actually part of a careful and choreographed and respectful protest that is actually done in a way that protects the safety of the officers and the protesters, but is a very significant way to send an important message of civil disobedience. We're talking about potentially creating felons out of folks who do that twice in 10 years. It's appropriate that certain kinds of actions while resisting arrest are felonies. They already are in statute. It's appropriate for resisting arrest to exist as it does in the misdemeanor world. It is not appropriate to create felons out of folks who get this charge 7,000 times. That means over 10 years, over 70,000, probably 75,000 charges of resisting arrest. Why are we creating felons out of misdemeanor level actions? This is an absolute no.
Thank you, Senator Squadron. The motion is on 3281 by Senator Golden. Negative votes? Senator Krueger, Senator Savino without recommendation, Senator Squadron
No.
in the negative. Bills reported. 3324 by Senator Alonso.
Senator, this is an act to amend the penal law in relation to creating a new statute dealing with dangerous driving in the 4th, 5th, 3rd, 2nd, and 1st degrees.
Motion to report. Negative votes? Bill, Senator Krueger without recommendation. Bills reported. 3335 by Senator Alonso.
This is an act to amend the criminal procedure law and the Family Court Act in relation to notification of service of ex parte order protections upon the complainant.
Motion to report. Negative votes? Senator Krueger without recommendation. Bills reported. 3347 by Senator Golden.
Senator, this is an act to amend the criminal procedure law in relation to reclassifying court officers and court clerks of the unified court system as police officers.
Motion to report. Senator Squadron.
This is the first of two bills. Again, in the interest of time, we will not belabor both of them. But police officer, this is different than the peace officer bills. In fact, we had a robust debate internally whether we sort of look for a comprehensive system on this we do with peace officers. And in fact, if you look at statute, the definition of police officer is appropriately quite limited in the state. In fact, I have a single page here, page and a half, double printed, for every defined police officer category in the entire state. Sheriffs, undersheriffs, deputy sheriffs, as Senator Akshar used to be, I believe, outside of New York City. The Parkway Police Department, I won't read them all, but it's specific, it's clear, and I think that, we're about to propose to add two different categories right now. There's all kinds of training, over 600 hours, I believe, of training for police officers, close to 200 hours, but less than 200 hours for peace officers. I think that if you look at the cost to get to the level of training necessary for police officers to the different entities that supervise these, if you look at the limit of the list, I think that adding police officer categories may be wise, may not, but it's the sort of thing that requires a hearing and a consideration and not sort of moving bills through in the way we do here, or even we potentially could with peace officers. Because I would say that the peace officer argument as made today has given me a lot to think about. Creating police officer categories should be done very carefully. We should make sure that the authorizing entity is ready to supervise and train police officers, because it's a very significant set of powers that we think is wisely given today. And so I am on both of these bills a no at the moment, though I could certainly be convinced in the future.
Senator Squadron, is your concern that the proposal to add court officers and/or corrections officers, which is the next bill, to the list of police officers under the law, that they might not have the requisite training with the same length of time that a police officer? So, for instance, in New York City, prior to becoming a police officer, you have to attend the New York City Police Academy, which is 6 months. Do you know how long someone is trained to be a corrections officer or a court officer? So
let me be clear. I think that for the roles that both corrections officers and court officers play, they put themselves at risk every day in both instances. As corrections officers, just about the most difficult job that I think one can imagine, and we have to honor them for the work they do and for the training they have. That said, I am not sure that either OCA, which oversees the court officers, I believe, nor New York City Department of Corrections is prepared to take on the training necessary and the costs associated with that training to get equivalent training to police officer status. I just don't know. It's not clear to me from the memo here. It seems like a big expectation to put not just on the officers themselves to kind of continue with that level of training, but also on the court system and New York City Department of Corrections. And so for those reasons, I'm concerned about applying this status and what the impact of that is.
I'm sorry. I think in answer to Senator Savino's question, I have a memo that shows police officers complete 649 hours of training in just their basic municipal police training program, and correctional officers have a basic training of 196 hours, which is only for care, custody, and control, not all the other functions of training for police officers. So I think it reinforces Senator Squadron's issues, and certainly the reason I'm going to be voting no on this.
I think Senator Akshar could speak to the extensive level of training and expertise that those with police officer status have, which is, well beyond care and control, as we well know. Enormous amount of judgment required and weapons training and other things.
Yeah, very specialized. Of course, as clearly indicated, depends on how my guess is that if we were going to be giving them police officer status, they would have to be trained up. Is that right?
That's correct.
And to a certain, we're not just going to give them the keys, right?
No.
If we reclassify these people, they have to.
And on that important point, Senator, just to emphasize it, that the new title change will mandate additional training in conjunction with where you were hitting, Senator.
Thank you.
And again, for that, I think we just need to hear from OCA and from the correction department whether they're prepared for that, and from the officers themselves whether they're prepared for that, because there's obviously all kinds of consequences.
And I think that's certainly appropriate inquiry for this measure as it becomes further debated. 3347 by...
Additional question, I'm sorry. Wait, 3347? Mine, I think is specific to
3347. Senator Golden, motion to report, negative votes. Senator Squadron, Senator Kruger, the negative bills reported. 3348 by Senator Golden, motion to report, Senator Kruger.
Thank you. Hearing you on the earlier issues of peace officer status for upstate New York, my understanding is this bill is specific to New York City uniform correctional officers, and I'm wondering whether NYPD has weighed in with the memo of support or opposition.
Do we have one? I don't know. I have not seen one. Senator Kruger.
Thank you. I will be a no on this.
Senator Kruger, the negative, 3348.
It doesn't appear that they're suggesting that they would be transferred to the jurisdiction of the NYPD, that they would simply become police officers, which I'm assuming, that they would then be granted the ability to arrest and detain people?
Well, warrantless arrests, certain kinds of arrests that are more limited now.
The justification memo for the correction says that New York City police cannot be everywhere, but New York City police are generally not at Rikers Island anyway.
And folks are charged with crimes on Rikers Island regularly. Has there been a similar request on this for the state corrections system? Actually, I thought that's where Senator Kruger was going. That's the
Not
question.
that I'm aware of.
And there's been no push for it here. I know that you're highly familiar with that system.
Not that I'm aware of, Senator.
Thank you.
Motion report 3348 by Senator Golden. Negative votes. Senator Kruger, Senator Squadron to the negative. Bills reported. 3406 by Senator Croce.
Senator, this is an act to amend the penal law in relation to criminal possession of computer-related material.
Motion report. Negative votes. Senator Kruger, the negative. Bills reported. 3484 by Senator Lanza.
This is an act to amend the penal law in relation to facilitating genital mutilation.
Yeah, facilitating.
Criminalizing the facilitation of...
Yes. Motion report. Negative votes. Bills reported. 3508 by Senator Golden.
Senator, this is an act to amend the penal law in relation to unlawfully fleeing a police officer in a motor vehicle.
Motion report. Negative votes. Bills reported. 3511 by Senator Seward.
Senator, this is an act to amend the penal law in relation to staging a motor vehicle accident.
Motion to report. Negative votes. Bills reported.
Senator, 33335 by Senator Lanza.
We did it. Well,
We did that one. We did it.
I thought we did it, but if council has questions, we'll come back.
Run back.
3335, back up in the calendar, about 4 bills. I thought we did this. If we haven't,
I believe we did it as well.
I believe we did it as well.
Yeah, I was handed my co-counsel.
I have no
note that we
objection to
did not do it.
that.
I believe we did it.
Yeah. I have a record of the vote.
let's do it again. Motion to report, negative votes, 3335 by Senator Lanza.
Without rec.
Senator Kruger without recommendation, bills reported. We had just completed 3511 by Senator Seward. The next measure is 3671 by Senator Young.
Senator, this is an act to amend the criminal procedure law in relation to peace officers at Alfred University.
Motion to report, Senator Kruger the negative, Senator Squadron without recommendation, bills reported. 3694A by Senator Serino. Motion to Council will read.
Senator, an act to amend the penal law in relation to consecutive sentencing for homicide offenses.
Motion to report. Negative votes. Bills reported. 4155A by Senator Golden.
Senator, this is an act to amend the criminal procedure law in relation to designating park rangers of New York City as peace officers under state law.
And I would just briefly point out, in the context of, again, the point that's been made a couple times by Senator Zolio about upstate, which I'm certainly going to think about coming out of this, I am also voting without recommendation here as it relates to New York City. However, I do know that the point made about New York City is true. There's a much broader range of peace officer status in New York City than in many upstate localities.
Thank you, Senator Squadron. The motion before us is to report 4155A by Senator Golden. Negative votes. Senator Kruger in the negative. Bills reported. 4418 by Senator Kennedy.
Senator, this is an act to amend the penal law in relation to aggravated promotion or possession of obscene sexual performance by a child.
Motion to report. Negative votes. Bills reported. 4515 by Senator Lanza.
Senator, this is an act to amend the criminal procedure law in relation to revocation of probation and resentencing upon a felony conviction while someone is under probation.
Senator Squadron. The motion is to report. Senator Squadron on the motion.
Forgive me, no concern. I mean, yes, forgive me.
Senator Squadron in the affirmative. Negative votes.
Without rec.
Senator Kruger without recommendation. 4515 by Senator Lanza is reported. 4593 by Senator Zolio.
Senator, this is an act to amend the penal law in relation to larceny.
Motion to report. Negative votes. Bills reported. 4655 by Senator Lanza.
Senator, this is an act to amend the penal law in relation to seizure and forfeiture of vehicles, vessels, and aircraft used in counterfeiting.
Motion to report. Senator Squadron.
Thank you. You know, I historically opposed this bill on the third-degree version of this crime. There is no dollar threshold. A little less concerned about the forfeiture or seizure of someone's private aircraft, but seizure of people's vehicles, especially outside of the New York City itself and the New York City region, can have devastating impacts for work and family and health. And not having a dollar threshold, we don't need to go through all the unit hypotheticals. They're on the record in prior years. It creates too many scenarios where you're talking about the forfeiture of the most important or second most important asset for individuals for living their lives in what could be mistakes or lack of intent or being kind of caught up in something. So it's the dollar threshold component around the forfeiture of the vehicles that raises the big concern for me, especially in the context of areas where the car is such an important part of one's life. So I am a negative.
Senator Zolio?
Senator Kruger.
I also negative, and I agree with my colleague Senator Squadron, I would just go one step further. Our forfeiture laws don't even require that the person is found guilty of the underlying charge in order to take and sell their property.
Great point.
Which is an added concern that I think should be looked at in this state. That you can bring a charge, never find the person guilty, and already have sold off their possessions. Just seems to be in the wrong order, even if one could accept the concept of the expanded keeping of the property.
Senator, is it not specifically as it relates to this legislative measure before us, but I can say that there are many aspects of forfeiture that are being examined. Our senior head counsel, Joe Messina, is in discussions on some of those matters in terms of forfeiture and appropriate forfeiture in settings. It's premature to discuss those now, but the committee may be deliberating those issues later this year. So thank you for your comments. The measure 4655 by Senator Alonso is before the committee. Senator Krueger, Senator Squadron in the negative. Bills reported. 4693 by Senator Laval.
Senator, this is an act to amend the criminal procedure laws in relation to the town of Brookhaven designating certain employees as peace officers.
Motion to report. Same discussion. Senator Krueger, Senator the negative. Senator Squadron without recommendation. Bills reported. 4777 by Senator Venditto.
This is an act to amend the penal law in relation to establishing crimes relating to false receipts and universal product code labels used in larceny.
Motion to report. Negative votes. Bills reported. 5164 by Senator Young.
Senator, this is an act to amend the criminal procedure law in relation to appointing special deputies that serve at the Chautauqua County grounds of the Chautauqua Institution as peace officers.
Senator Young's Bill 5164. Motion to report. Senator Krueger, the negative. Senator Squadron.
On this bill, I've historically been in the negative because it goes beyond the normal peace officer status to include the status of special deputy sheriffs, and there's been a lack of clarity on that. So I'm going to stay negative here, but again, I do think that in the context of the conversation we've had today, it could be that there's a justification for this as there are with the others, and we will look at those before they come to the floor. So,
Senator Squadron, also in the negative, I think this measure points out the fallacy of the issue. The bill's reported. Just as an aside, I appreciate your search of a comprehensive measure, but frankly, that's akin to just saying no to every measure. These are extremely unique circumstances. As you can tell, this is about establishing this prior bill was about establishing peace officer status within the grounds of the Chautauqua Institution. Now, that designates those grounds are unique, they're extensive, they're worldwide in their notoriety, and that yet it is one size does not fit all when it comes to peace officers. So that's again the point we're trying to make. Having them all taken together in one bill or one day of session, I think highlights that fact. So thank you for your at least listening to this side of the argument. 5201 by Senator Croce. Senator Croce's bill will be read.
An act to amend the penal law in relation to creating the crime of stolen valor.
Motion to report. Negative votes. Bills reported. 5677 by Senator Griffo.
This is an act to amend the criminal procedure law in relation to removal of certain criminal actions to veterans treatment courts.
Thank you very much. Motion is to report Senator Griffo's bill. Negative votes. Bills reported. 5792A by Senator Marchione.
This is an act to amend the criminal procedure law in relation to enabling a victim of a misdemeanor to make a statement at the sentencing of a defendant.
Motion to report. Senator Krueger.
It's my understanding that there's not separate sentencing in most misdemeanor cases, so can I just get a clarification? Under this bill, there would have to be a new set of steps for misdemeanor cases where there was a 10-day period for notification for family members who might want to make a statement, victim, who might want to make a statement. So one question, why do you have to build in a 10-day period, a second court date for sentencing, and is it a written statement or they must be in court? That was a little confusing to me in the bill itself.
There's always a sentencing, whether it be at the time of plea or whether it be at some date thereafter. There's always a sentencing. So what this bill would do in the misdemeanor context is allow commentary by the specified class in misdemeanor cases to give their thoughts to the sentencing court, to the judge. Not very different than what occurs in felony cases, and it is a practice that the sponsor believes is important in certain misdemeanor cases.
So again, just because I'm not an attorney who goes to criminal court, my understanding is in felonies there's a jury trial, the person is found guilty, and then there's a sentencing date. You come back and then you make your arguments before the judge and they determine the sentence. In misdemeanors, is that the normal model? I didn't think that was. Because many misdemeanors don't involve.
Well, many misdemeanors have, whether it's a plea or a jury trial, there's a judgment of conviction, and then there's a sentence, and that sentence can be in misdemeanor cases. It can be at the time of the plea, at the time of the judgment, or it can be in a date in the future. It depends on the.
Right. So this bill says you give 10 days notice to the victim. So does that then build in a new time frame for misdemeanor court cases? Because now there must be a 10-day notice given.
Well, it says it says if requested. So the victim or the interested party would communicate that through the district attorney's office, and then the district attorney would make that request that the victim can speak at the sentencing. And in those cases, if it is requested, then yes, there would have to be a time period in the future where there would be a sentencing, and this person would come in and make their commentary.
And is it a oral or written or either? That also was a little vague to me.
I don't know that it specifies, but generally in the felony context, it is in person. I don't think there is anything that that prevents the judge from accepting written in certain circumstances. The judge controls his courtroom, so. But I think it would be, for the most part, in person.
But the whole new process would start with the district attorney's office, so they would have the responsibility to do the 10-day notification of the victims of their right to be there to access. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, in all cases, the district attorney's office is in communication with the complainant or the victim, and presumably during that course of communication with them, they would inform them of this right, like they do in the felony circumstance, and the victim would make a decision whether or not they would want to speak at the sentencing, and if they did so speak, then they would follow this process.
And again, it's my lack of understanding of the process of a criminal case going through the DA's office. So this may or may not add steps and dates for court for a district attorney. Do we know whether the DAs were asked their opinion of this bill, or did they put a memo in pro or con?
We usually hear from the DA's Association when they oppose things, for the most part. I do not I don't know if there's the answer to that. I'll have to get back to you, Senator.
Chair, I'm going to go with that. I don't think I'm opposed to this bill. I just think I'm a little confused about the added steps and perhaps costs for the court system to have to add additional visits to court and timeframes for sentencing in misdemeanors, where I think today misdemeanor cases usually are done on a, they're done that day. There's not a recall back in for sentencing like felonies. So I'm going to go with that. Frankly, I'm going to ask my DA, because I'm curious whether the DA would have a concern.
I think thank you, Senator, for your inquiry. The measure is named after Emma, whose father was seriously injured as a result of a traffic accident that in effect resulted in traumatic brain injury, and that the emotional and financial toll on the family was significant. The plea was to a misdemeanor charge of reckless driving, and that plea in effect prevented Emma from being able to provide input about the loss of her dad for all intents and purposes. It's, I think, trying to address, and I think it does address, I believe it does address the issue of a district attorney deciding that an issue may not rise to the level of a felony, but under many circumstances it has serious implications. The criminality has serious implications on a family that is victimized by that resultant plea. The motion is to report 5792A by Senator Marchione. Negative votes? Without recommendation, Senator Kruger. Bills reported. 6327 by Senator Marchione.
Senator, this is a peace officer, an act to amend the criminal procedure law in relation to designating peace officers at Saratoga Hospital.
Motion to report. Senator Kruger in the negative. Senator Squadron without recommendation. Bills reported. 6565 by Senator Alonso.
Senator, this is a act to amend the criminal procedure law in relation to changing the definition of New York City sheriffs and letting them function as police officers.
Senator Squadron.
Thank you. Just a clarification here. Sheriffs, deputy sheriffs outside of New York City serve in a very clear law enforcement role. It's the county equivalent in many instances of the police department in New York City. Sheriffs in New York City, as I understand it, play a different role. And it's similar to the role of a marshal, having to do with liens on property and seizure of property. And I, in fact, have recently had very, very positive interactions on some district issues with repeated violators and scofflaws of a intercity bus permit regulation legislation that Senator Golden and I passed in a bipartisan fashion together a couple of years ago with the Sheriff's Office. I want to be clear, I think they, in the current iteration, are really being very responsive and understanding their role. They didn't mention to me that they want to be police officers. I'm not sure why they would, other than the fact they're called sheriffs, which in the context outside of New York City absolutely are police officers, to be very clear. So I find this bill a little confusing. Do we know who's asked for this bill and why?
Senator Squadron, I've been advised that last year the deputy sheriffs advocated for this. I think that one of these duties, although in the city of New York primarily civil, nonetheless have very criminal consequences in the sense that enforcing our sales tax laws, the laws regarding the taxation of cigarettes, the type of products that may be sold without taxation, they are provided with the same types of authorities as enforcing the law, relative to enforcing the law. Also domestic relations issues. That's the purpose is of the sponsor is to give those deputies and under sheriffs the same rights and protections of police officers.
So I appreciate that. I am a no now. I would love to have a conversation with the sheriff's office and the police department about this. I worry, just the final point, I worry about the marshals coming to us and asking for police officer status too. Privately contracted folks who do not all of, but much of the same work the sheriffs do. And so, for those reasons, I'll be a no.
Motion is report 6565. Negative vote, Senator Kruger, and without recommendation.
And negative.
And the negative, Senator Squadron. Bill is reported. 6578 by Senator Latimer.
Senator, this is an act to amend the criminal procedure law in relation to designating employees of the Village of Port Chester as uniform court officers, designating those uniform court officers as peace officers.
Motion to report. Senator Kruger, the negative. Pardon me, Senator? Yes, in the negative. Senator Squadron without recommendation. I didn't want to speak for you, Senator. I wasn't sure.
No, I appreciate that.
Motion is reported. 6638 by Senator Flanagan.
Senator, this is in relation to designating uniform officers of the Fire Marshal's Office in the town of Huntington as peace officers.
Motion to report. Senator Kruger, the negative. Senator Squadron without recommendation. Bill is reported. S6691A by Senator Alonso. Did I miss a bill? Yes, I'm sorry. 6643 by Senator Ord.
Senator, this is an act to amend the criminal procedure law in relation to designating positions employed by the municipal police departments as peace officers.
Senator Squadron.
So two things briefly. One, this was, I think, the most surprising of the many peace officer bills we've seen. Vote without rec on this one, too, because I think, as frankly the chair has pointed out, there are unique circumstances to each. I think on this one, a much broader and deeper explanation of doctors would be, I understand they were the tactical unit, but nonetheless, would be in order. I would also say we're coming to the end of this marathon agenda, and I just want to say to the chair, we have frequently disagreed in this committee, but I have learned a great deal in doing it. I really appreciate getting through this kind of agenda and the way we have so far, and so thank you for that and for the opportunity to disagree as vociferously as I did, and even sometimes to be convinced.
Thank you very much, Senator. Motion to report 6643 by Senator Ord. Negative vote, Senator Kruger. The negative, Senator Squadron without recommendation. Bill is reported. 6691A by Senator Alonso.
Senator, this is an act to amend the criminal procedure law in relation to granting certain court reporters as peace officers.
Motion to report. Negative vote, Senator Kruger. The negative, Senator Squadron without recommendation. 6945 by Senator Alonso.
Senator, this is an act to amend the criminal procedure law in relation to designating certain employees of the Jacob Javits Center as peace officers.
Motion to report. Negative vote, Senator Kruger. The negative, Senator Squadron without recommendation. Before we get to the last bill, I want to thank Senator Squadron, the minority and our majority members for their participation and cooperation in this lengthy agenda that we think certainly crystallized a lot of issues, and that your cooperation was indeed very, very helpful. And thank you for those discussions. I'd also like to thank Rodney Powis for putting together a lengthy agenda. A lot of research went into this, and thank you and our councils for doing just that. And thank you, Melissa, for keeping all those votes in a very accurate way. Our last bill, 7029 by Senator Seward.
Senator, this is an act to amend the criminal procedure law in relation to granting peace officer status to the security force members of Mary Mojene Bassett Hospital Network.
Motion to report, and I'm just going to wildly guess Senator Kruger in the negative and Senator Squadron without recommendation.
Excellent.
Thank you very, very much.
You.
Meeting's adjourned. Thanks very, very much. All right. Very nice. Thanks.